Welcome you all to this class on Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence. We finished 9 chapters in our previous classes, and today we are starting chapter 10, which is the title of which is Clara. Now, there are two girls in Paul's life. Paul is the protagonist of this novel, we all know that. And Paul is dwindling between his relationship with his mother and basically Miriam. Now, another girl we see immersed in the previous 2 chapters, whose name is Clara. But Clara is, married, and Miriam was unmarried, obviously. And we see that the relationship between Paul and Miriam, it was a kind of, relationship that didn't find any destination so far. The reason is what we understand from their conversation and from their relationship is that Paul is basically influenced by his relationship with his mother. He is completely influenced by his mother. And whenever he makes relationship with any girl, he subconsciously tries to find out the characteristics of his mother in that girl. So this, tendency and this attitude or this psychological, not crisis, but this psychological reality is not an exception for Paul. It happens to many people, or it can happen to any person in the world, that whenever the person falls in love, he wants to discover some qualities that he finds in his mother. And mother fixation in Paul was so prominent that it impeded the development or hindered the development of relationship with Miriam. This was one problem. The second problem was that Paul, as a young boy, he was also looking for physical pleasures, which Miriam was completely indifferent to. Miriam was indifferent to any kind of physical advancement, and she was basically influenced by her orientation with Christianity or religion, and she believed in spirit. I mean the spiritual connection of souls, and she was indifferent to the physical pleasures or to the fulfillment of physical love. So there was another clash between the two opposite, philosophy towards love. Paul's philosophy towards love, not I should not say philosophy, it's a strong word, but Paul's expectation in his affair was also included his physical pleasures, which Miriam was completely averse to. Now, this was the second reason why their relationship didn't find any destination or hasn't found any destination so far. In this connection, I would like to draw a comparison between Sons and Lovers and Shesher Kavita by Rabindranath Tagore. And why I am drawing this connection? The reason is that in Shesher Kavita we see that Amit has a two relation, has got two relationships. He is connected with or related to Lavanya and at the same time to Ketoki as well. Now, what we realize from Shesher Kavita that Amit's relationship with Lavanya is basically spiritual one, and his relationship with Ketoki is a physical one. And what we see in this novel that Paul's relationship with Miriam is spiritual one, and his fascination, which is getting momentum or which is becoming prominent and stronger as the novel advances, is basically physical. He feels a kind of physical attraction towards Clara, and this relationship is completely dominated by physical pleasures. So why I am drawing the comparison, the reason is that basically love is a combination of both physical and spiritual flavor. If we bring into comparison John Donne or John Donne's poetry and Marvell's poetry as well, what we see that even in the metaphysical age, or these metaphysical poets, they also emphasize the necessity of both body and soul for the successful love affair. So we are not blaming Paul, we are not blaming Miriam, but what we are trying to find out that this is the reality that prevails in the relationship between Paul and Miriam. The relationship is not becoming successful for two reasons. I said the first reason is Paul is completely, haunted by his psychological, communion with his mother. He always tries to find out his mother in other girls. So this is one mother fixation is the main reason. And the second reason is that Miriam is that type of girl who prefers to respond to spiritual flavor, not physical, uh, you know, pleasures. So this is the reason why the love affair is not getting successful. Now let's see what happens to Paul when he gets involved in a kind of affair with Clara, a married girl. And obviously, I have already said that it's going to be a physical love. Now, what if we see that even Paul fails to develop any permanent relationship with Clara, then we will look at Paul from another point of view. That if a person fails to develop a spiritual relationship with a girl, and at the same time, if he fails to develop physical relationship with another girl, and continues that relationship, or if a person is not fascinated either by physical love or by spiritual love or the combination of both, then where lies the problem? So that is our final challenge to find out. So let's start chapter 10. Paul sends a painting to an exhibition, at Nottingham Castle. And one morning, Mrs. Morel gets very excited upon reading a letter. So what Paul does, he's a painter. He sends a painting to an exhibition at Nottingham. And Mrs. Morel gets a letter and she becomes elated. She becomes very happy. It turns out that he has won first prize and the painting has been sold for 20 guineas to Major Morton. And she becomes very happy not because Paul has won, uh, you know, 20 guineas. That's not the financial, achievement or success is not probably the main concern for the mother. The mother becomes very happy because her son has got the first prize. And one thing I explained in the previous class, and I also want to share with you in today's class as well, that both, Mrs. Morel and Miriam, they want to possess, Paul. So this possessiveness also becomes, very difficult for sense of possessiveness becomes difficult for Paul to, conform to. Paul cannot conform to the possessive attitude of his mother and Miriam. So Paul basically, what D.H. Lawrence shows that Paul loses his identity, being possessed either by his mother or by Miriam. So this is very dangerous situation for a person. That people say that I possess you, so this is a very dangerous word, possessive. If a person is completely possessed by another person, then the person loses his identity, his individuality, and he cannot work or she cannot work according to her own sweet will. Now, Paul and his mother rejoice at this success, and he tells her that she can use the money to buy Arthur out of the army. And Paul also offers his mother to, bring Arthur back. I hope that you can still remember that Arthur is working in the army, and Mrs. Morel went to the army to have her son back home, but she failed. And now Paul proposes that, mother, you can spend the money and you can bring Arthur home. Paul is invited to some dinner parties and tells his mother that he needs an evening suit. She gives him a suit that was William's. So after this after this success, Paul was invited by many people, and he tells his mother that I need a suit, and his mother gives him a suit that belonged to William. But we all know that William died early, and the mother gives William's suit to Paul. Paul's newfound success prompts discussions with his mother about class and happiness. She wants her son to ascend into the middle class, but he says that he feels closest to the common people. So again, you see that here comes the class distinction. They belong to the working class people, and the mother expects that, or lower middle class or working class people. The mother expects that her son should, ascend to, his her son should increase the standard of the family to the middle class. But Paul says that he rather feels comfortable with the common people. Mrs. Morel wants her son to be happy, which seems mostly to mean finding a good woman and beginning to settle down. And Mrs. Morel, as a mother, as every mother wants, expects her son to find a good girl or a good woman and starts, his conjugal life. Paul argues that he worries a normal life might bore him, but Paul, he is not sure why he is worried. But he says, or he tells his mother, that the normal life might be proved boring to him. So he doesn't know why, but he is quite sure that it's going to be boring. Paul maintains his connection with Miriam, able neither to break it off entirely nor to go the full way to engagement. Now, early in the previous chapter, we came to know that Paul proposed breakup, but Miriam was so innocent that she even didn't understand what does the phrase breakup mean and what was the necessity of breaking up. And their relationship, it didn't stop or it didn't go further. So it was a kind of stalemate situation, a stagnant situation that prevailed in the relationship between Paul and Miriam. He feels that he owes himself to her, but he begins to drift slightly away from her. So he thinks that he owns that girl, and still there is something in Paul that tells him that, well, you are not Miriam's, or Miriam is not yours. So it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, the relationship doesn't go anywhere. Arthur is married to Beatrice and she has a child. So the younger brother gets married and he has a child as well. At first, Arthur marries and Arthur has a son. At first, he is irritable and unhappy, but eventually he begins to accept his responsibilities and care for his wife and child. At the beginning, Arthur was to some extent unhappy, he was irritable, but gradually he conforms to the situation, he can compromise with the situation, and he becomes successful, and he starts enduring or shouldering the responsibilities and taking care of his wife and child. One day, a mutual friend asks Paul to take a message to Clara Dawes. The title of the chapter is Clara. So that friend gives Paul a message to carry to Clara Dawes. Clara Dawes because the name of Clara's husband is Baxter Dawes. He goes to her house, meets her mother, and observes them working on making lace. So Paul goes to the house of Clara and observes that they were making lace. You know what is lace, which is attached with dress. He delivers his message, has a pleasant conversation with Clara and her mother, and leaves, having gotten a humbling view of Clara, whom he had previously believed to be so high and mighty. And when he delivers the message and has a conversation with Clara and Clara's mother, he develops a different view towards Clara. And now he has a kind of positive view towards Clara. Earlier, he was prejudiced against Clara's, he thought that Clara had a kind of, high thought about herself, high perception about herself, and she considered she was haughty, she was proud. So now this visit changed Paul's mind, and Paul developed a kind of positive attitude towards Clara. Paul finds out that Susan, one of the girls at Jordan's, the place where Paul works, and is leaving to get married. So a girl is resigning at Jordan's. It's the place where Paul works, and one girl is giving up job, resigning job, and so he gets Clara her job, and he helps Clara to get the job in the company where he himself works, where he has an acquaintance named Susan. The other girls do not like Clara because she acts like she is above them. They call her the Queen of Sheba. The other girls who work with Clara, they do not like her because Clara has something in her character which is disliked by other girls, and those girls also they also think that Clara is very proud, Clara is haughty, and that is why they don't like Clara. One day Paul is rude to Clara, so it happens that not relationship, the you know conversation, the meeting with Clara becomes more frequent. And one day, in one incident, Paul behaves rudely with Clara. And later he regrets his rudeness and brings her chocolates as an apology. He again, as a symbol of apology, brings chocolates for Clara. On his birthday, Fanny surprises him with a gift of paints that all the girls except Clara, who they do not include in their planning, have chipped in to buy him. So it was Paul's birthday, and all the girls decided and to give Paul a gift, and they did they gave the gift, and only one girl was excluded from this plan, and that girl was Clara. So you can easily understand that all the girls were either jealous of Clara or they didn't like Clara. And that is why they did not include Clara in their plan for buying gift for Paul. Paul goes out walking at dinner time with Clara, and she complains that the girls have some secret from her. So still Clara is in the dark. And when Paul and Clara go to dinner, Clara says that the girls are hiding something from her, and she doesn't know what they are hiding. Paul tells her that the secret was the planning for his birthday present, and Paul informs her that it was Paul's birthday and the girls were planning for his birthday, and that was probably the secret they kept. And that evening she sends him a book of verse and a note. This incident brings Paul and Clara close together. So Clara also gives a gift to Paul, and this incident brings Paul and Clara closer together. It's not because Clara gives a gift, but because Paul tells Clara the secret of the plan that other girls made. So this sharing secret with Clara developed confidence in her and probably love to some extent. We are starting chapter 11, the test on Miriam. Now, as the relationship with Clara develops, Paul's relationship with Clara develops, the affair between Paul and Miriam gets threatened. It's very natural. Inspired by Clara's advice, Paul realizes that he must go back to Miriam. But Clara is that type of girl who tells Paul to go back to Miriam, and she says that your relationship with Miriam has to continue. He reflects that the problems between the two of them may have been caused by the lack of sexuality in their relationship. He feels no aversion to her, rather, he feels that his desire for her has been overwhelmed by his stronger shyness and virginity. I told you earlier that Paul wants to explore, wants to find out that why his relationship with Miriam is not developing. The reason he he thinks that the lack of their physical relationship might be the reason why their love affair is not developing, because they are physically detached from each other. Now, if we follow the philosophy of love of John Donne, then we realize that body and soul both are necessary for the successful completion of love affair. Even if we bring into comparison Tagore's novel, Shesher Kavita, what does Amit finally do? Finally, he basically surrenders to physical love. So, what was the not message? What was the uh, what should I say? What was Tagore's perception about love? Uh, if we say that the defeat of Lavanya and the victory of Ketuki, it's true that finally Amit married Ketuki. And Ketuki represented physical love, and Lavanya represented spiritual love. So, will we say that for the successful completion of a love affair, you cannot deny, you cannot ignore the physical entity of a person? That is the question. So, what arises in Paul's mind that the physical aversion, that indifference towards physical love, might be responsible for the impediment of their love affair, or that is the reason why their love affair is not becoming successful. He begins to spend more time with Miriam again, much to the dismay of his mother. And again, Paul starts spending time with Miriam. But the mother of Paul is not happy. Now, I again draw your attention to this. A mother uh, has to be happy because Miriam is a good girl. She is a virtuous girl. She is a spiritual type of girl. So the mother has to be happy. We expect that any mother who realizes that the girl who has developed a relationship with her son is not completely focused on physical pleasures, rather on psychological connection, on spiritual connection, on mental connection, the mother is expected to be happy. But contrary to our expectation, what we observe that surprisingly, Mrs. Morel is unhappy. But D.H. Lawrence is not surprised. Sigmund Freud is also not surprised. And we, the modern readers, we are also not surprised. Why? Because there is a battle going on between, on the psychological level, between Miriam and Mrs. Morel. Who is going to be successful to possess Paul? So it's a battle of possessiveness between Mrs. Morel and Miriam. And Mrs. Morel is very afraid that Miriam has not attracted her son by means of physical glamour, but she has a deep concern for Paul's soul. And it is the soul which is again the concern of the mother. And it is not the concern of Mrs. Morel alone. It's the concern of any mother in the world. Now, I don't know whether you will understand what I'm going to, you know, tell you now. That do you know that when a mother looks for her daughter-in-law, I mean, son's wife, do you know that the criteria that she puts above everything? What I have observed from my point of view, and not only that, it's not my personal point of view alone. If we read the psychoanalytical, psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud, the mother always looks for a beautiful girl for her son's wife. Why? Because she expects that her son has to be confined to the physical glamour of his wife so that the soul remains intact for the mother. I repeat, the mother is not that much concerned about the beauty of their daughter in law, but the mother is very much concerned because the mother expects that the love affair, that the relationship of her son should persist, should exist, should prevail on the physical level. So the son has to be fascinated by the physical beauty of the girl he is going to marry. And if the relationship develops on the spiritual level, then the mother is going to lose her son forever. And why Mrs. Morel is afraid? Because Mrs. Morel has realized that Miriam is that type of girl whose main concern is the soul of Paul, which again Mrs. Morel thinks she possesses. There lies the problem. One day he begins a serious discussion with her about marriage. Now, Paul starts a discussion with Miriam regarding marriage and asks her if she thinks they have been too fierce in their purity towards each other. And Paul says, don't you think we are too rude to our purity and we don't come close to each other? He tells her that he loves her, that he has been obstinate, and he kisses her. And now Paul becomes very desperate and he becomes obstinate, arrogant, and he almost by force kisses Miriam and tells Miriam that this is the reason why our love affair is not getting successful. On their way home, he asks her if she will sleep with him, and she tells him that she will, but not now. Now you know that Paul proposes for physical pleasures to Miriam. And what does Miriam do? Miriam says that, well, it's not the time now. I will, accept your proposal, but not now. We have to wait. Probably she is talking about marriage. So Miriam is a religious girl. Miriam is a spiritual type of girl. So these two, Miriam and Paul, they are standing, opposite to each other. Miriam, as I am telling you repeatedly, since she is a spiritual girl, she thinks that physical relationship before marriage is not valid. On the other hand, Paul, since he is, driven by nature and instinct to some extent, he thinks that physical pleasure is the, reason, or the absence of physical pleasure is the reason why he is losing his interest towards Miriam. Miriam feels that her submission to Paul will be a sacrifice. And Miriam, this is very important sentence. Miriam thinks that if she gets involved in physical love, it will be a kind of sacrifice for her. Because she is not feeling any, spirit within herself to come close on the physical level. And it is a sacrifice she is willing to make for him. But still, if Paul persists, if Paul forces, she is ready to sacrifice herself. But love is one thing and sacrifice is different thing. So since Paul is expecting physical pleasures, Miriam is ready for that, but not willingly. But she wants to sacrifice herself. When does a person sacrifice? A person sacrifices herself or himself when the mind is absent, when the mind doesn't respond to. So Miriam says that if I offer physical relationship, if I get involved into physical relationship, it will be a kind of sacrifice of my body to Paul. He begins to treat his relationship with her as a romantic relationship. One evening they go into the woods and she relinquished herself to him, but with some horror and with her soul somewhat apart. Now, they go to the wood. There is a kind of physical relationship, but what is very important that the girl realizes that even in the time of physical pleasures, her soul is absent. So it's purely a kind of physical sacrifice. So, Miriam is, there is a kind of inhibition in Miriam. And because of this inhibition, because of this aversion to physical love, she can never get herself involved into physical pleasures. And she becomes someone else. She considers her physical pleasures with Paul as a kind of sacrifice because she is saying that when she gets involved in physical love, her soul goes somewhere. So she is mentally absent at the time of physical love. So that inhibition might be the impediment in the road of love. Miriam goes to stay at her grandmother's cottage and Paul visits her often. So Miriam goes to her grandmother's cottage. Paul goes there to visit her. One holiday, he goes to spend the whole day with her. She prepares dinner. For that day, they feel as though they live together in that cottage. They spend very beautiful time in the cottage of Miriam's grandmother, and they feel that they stay together. They take a walk outside after dinner and then come back inside and make love. So they go outside after the dinner, then again they come back and they make love. So what does make love mean? It means they have physical love. Paul feels that he is sacrificing Miriam and that she is allowing herself to be sacrificed because she loves him so much. But what Paul realizes that, you know, in physical love, Miriam doesn't have any interest. And Paul realizes that Miriam is, approving Paul's advancement in physical love only because Miriam loves Paul. But Miriam doesn't have any interest for physical love, and Miriam is simply sacrificing herself. So when a boy realizes that it's a kind of sacrifice on the girl's part, simply because she loves the boy, and there is no response, there is no fascination. Now, Miriam doesn't have any fascination for physical love, so it's a very tough relationship to continue. During the next week, he asks her why she is so hesitant toward him. So Paul asks Miriam that why are you hesitant in physical love? And she replies that she feels it's not quite right because they are not married. And what does Miriam say? Miriam says that why should we enjoy physical love? Because we are not married. And Miriam thinks that physical love is approved only after marriage. He tells her that he would like to marry her. Paul says that, well, I am going to marry you. But she feels they are too young. But Miriam says that we are too young to be married. He begins to feel a sense of failure and to draw somewhat away from Miriam again. So this attitude of Miriam is also responsible why Paul is going away. He begins to spend more time with his main friends and also once again with Clara. So that their Paul's physical relationship with Miriam is not successful. And it was a kind of sacrifice on Miriam's part because she did not respond anytime and she didn't find any pleasures in love making. And Paul also realized it. And it was a kind of passivity, on Miriam's part. And Paul didn't like it. And that's why he started mixing with his main friends and Clara. Paul tells his mother that he will break off with Miriam because he does not love her and does not want to marry her. Now, Paul tells his mother that he will not marry Miriam and he doesn't love Miriam. She is somewhat surprised and encourages him to do whatever he thinks is best. The mother is surprised, but still, subconsciously, she is not unhappy. Why? I will explain in my next class, and that class is going to be the last class. He goes to Miriam and tells that they should break off because he does not want to marry. Paul goes to Miriam and tells that I want to break up. She is upset. Miriam is upset, tells him that he is a child of 4. And Miriam tells Paul that you are behaving like a child and tells him that she knew all along that it would not work out between them. This upsets Paul and he begins to feel that she has deceived him. She had only pretended to love him, the part each full of bitterness. Paul accuses Miriam that Miriam deceived Paul. On the other hand, Miriam also accused Paul that Paul was behaving like a child. So, what is interesting, what is significant at the end of this chapter, that Miriam and Paul, they're standing opposite to each other uh, because their attitude towards love is completely different. And Paul is not getting any interest in his relationship with Miriam. And Miriam, as I have said, is a spiritual type of girl who believes in physical love after marriage, but still she sacrificed her body, you know, to Paul only because she loved Paul. And Paul realized that it was a kind of sacrifice on Miriam's part, and Miriam did not enjoy physical pleasures. So Paul thinks that he should not stay with a girl who is ready to sacrifice. He wants genuine love. So, genuine love for any reason, we are not completely sure, but for certain reason is missing. And I want to complete, or I want to stop today's class here. And the next class is going to be the last class on Sons and Lovers, and that class is going to be a larger one, probably of at least 1 hour. So I hope that you will attend that class. So thank you very much.